Another item I wanted to bring up on this podcast is the way Trump now is treating Michigan the same way he treated Ukraine. And we can congratulate the Senate Republicans for that, right? There's a piece in Rolling Stone by Ryan Bort, and he mentions that a few weeks before Trump was impeached last December for attempting to blackmail Ukraine into investigating Joe Biden. Remember that? Stanford law professor at the time, Pamela Karlan, warned the House Judiciary Committee of a future that was going to come when Trump would use similar tactics on his own country. It had to happen. You know, if you're a fascist, you're not a fascist just to other people, other countries. And at the time, this is what she said, Professor Karlan, quote, "Imagine living in a part of Louisiana or Texas that's prone to devastating hurricanes and flooding. What would you think if you lived there and your governor asked for a meeting with the president to discuss getting disaster aid that Congress had provided for? What would you think if that president said, 'Well, I'd like you to do us a favor. I'll meet with you and send the disaster relief once you brand my opponent a criminal,'" end quote. And Professor Karlan says, wouldn't you know in your gut that such a president has abused his office? That he'd betrayed the national interest? That he was trying to corrupt the electoral process? And then she added, "I believe the evidentiary record shows wrongful acts on those scale here," end quote. That was last December. That was a lifetime ago, it seems like, huh? So you have to agree, if you are rational, if you are sane, that it didn't take long for Professor Karlan's hypotheticals to become reality. Trump has repeatedly criticized Democratic governors throughout this entire crisis. And as Rolling Stone reports, the implication of that criticism being that there could be repercussions if these states fail to cooperate, these governors fail to cooperate with Trump, or if they fail to show their loving gratitude for dear leader and everything he has done for them. Jesus Christ. So in late March, Trump came pretty close, and it's gotten worse since then, to laying out a quid pro quo during an interview with the Fox filth sewer. Trump said, while discussing states in need of federal assistance, he said, quote, "It's a two-way street. They have to treat us nice also." Jesus Christ. You remember that, right? Well, last Wednesday, Trump's psychotic demands grew more specific. And as the Stone reports, as part of his morning Twitter movement, he posted that he will withhold funding from Michigan and Nevada, we talked about this, two key swing states, if they expand voter access ahead of the 2020 election, if they make it possible for mail-in voting to be available to all of their citizens because of what we're dealing with, and because Trump knows he can't fuck with mail-in voting the way he can fuck with the electoral system if it's done mechanically, since he knows that, he's willing to defund the Postal Service to get it to not happen. And this orange ape initially accused Michigan of sending out vote-by-mail ballots to residents. And then he posted a corrected tweet, and he deleted the earlier one, saying that they were sending out vote-by-mail applications. But Trump is an ignorant fucking ape. Somebody pointed out to him, hey, boss, what? They're not ballots. Jesus Christ. But sending out ballots, so are applications, so are Republican-controlled states like the one I live in, Georgia. There's nothing even remotely illegal going on here. But these types of distinctions, Rolling Stone reports, or facts, that there's nothing wrong going on, Georgia's doing it, Michigan's doing it, these types of facts are immaterial to Trump's continued effort to restrict voter access and to sow doubt in the legitimacy of the electoral process. This is what a fucking dictator does. This is what a fascist pig son of a bitch does. This is what Mitch McConnell has allowed to happen to the United States. This. So it's not just Trump. His filthy, criminal, fucking adult sons and his adult daughter, not Tiffany, the other one, the sick fucker, and his sick fucking son-in-law, and all these people who cluster around him. They're the ones who are doing this. They are the fascists. They are the inner circle of these neo-Nazis who are slowly, inexorably destroying what's left of our system before it ever had a chance to reach fruition. Here we are. God. And Rolling Stone wants to point out, just to be clear, there's no evidence of voter fraud, either by millions across state lines to vote multiple times, which is a scheme that the Orange Ape cited in explaining his popular vote loss to Hillary Clinton, or any fraud through vote by mail. According to a recent survey, the Stone writes here, published by the Stanford Institute for Economic Policy Research, there's no evidence that vote by mail helps Democrats either. The only thing expanding vote by mail means is more people will be able to vote, especially as the Trump virus has heightened the risk of standing in these lines, as the voters in Wisconsin found out during the last election. However, denigrating the process of vote by mail, making it sound like it's a criminal conspiracy, that's become a central part of Trump's 2020 re-election campaign. This son of a bitch. And his goal is to ensure that few Americans as possible are able to make it to the polls. Because Trump believes, and I think it's been proven, that the more people who vote, the worse his chances are. But when you have completely open voting, this country always goes Democratic. Capital D. Always. Even in a case like Nixon-McGovern. In that instance, so many people just said, fuck it, and stayed home. Like what happened in 2016? Anyway, Trump is doing everything he can to prevent the Democrats from increasing funding for absentee ballots and vote by mail in this current coronavirus relief package that is held up now by this pig-fucking Mitch McConnell and the Orange Ape. Trump told the Fox Sewer on March 30th, quote, they had levels of voting that if you ever agreed to it, you'd never have a Republican elected in this country again. Which is probably the only truthful statement this rancid son of a bitch has made in the past, I don't know what, decade? 20 years, his whole fucking life? They had levels of voting that if you ever agreed to it, you'd never have a Republican elected in this country again. That was his words, and he said it on the Fox Sewer. And whatever filthy slime son of a bitch was interviewing him on the Sewer Network, just let that float right past, rather than stopping right then and saying, Mr. President, do you realize what you said? That high levels of voting in this country means you'd never have a Republican elected again? Gee, boss, are you aware of what you just said? But because it was the Fox Sewer, of course the interviewer's not going to point that out. Are you kidding me? So now Trump, getting back to the comparison between what he's doing here and what he did to Ukraine, Trump is trying to blackmail these swing states into suppressing their vote-by-mail initiatives. And then as the Rolling Stone reports, one of them, Michigan, is not only struggling with COVID-19, but with historic floods in the center of the state. How could Trump be so brazen? Well, he already got away with it, trying to blackmail a foreign nation into interfering in the 2020 election. Why wouldn't he do it again? And this is what Mitch McConnell guaranteed. It's okay, boss of all bosses. I know what you did. My Republican caucus knows what you did. But, I mean, we need you, boss.
Hi, Truth Seekers. Mike Malloy here. As you know, we've switched formats and are now broadcast exclusively on the Progressive Voices Network. So that means you get fewer program interruptions, no corporate commercials, and lots of profanity. But our format change also means some of our radio listeners no longer hear the program. It's been a while since I mentioned our podcasts, so you may have forgotten that there is a way to listen to this program anytime you need a good dose of screaming. Visit MikeMalloy.com and subscribe to our podcast. You have your choice. You can listen to the ranting with the audio podcast or listen and watch me lose control with a video podcast subscription. As a podcast subscriber, you can download the program to your mobile device and take me with you wherever you go. And if you have a friend who needs a dose of truth-seeking, you can give a gift subscription as well. That's MikeMalloy.com, and never miss a minute of the uncensored fun and frivolity.